Namaskar. I'm very glad to have this opportunity to take another topic today. And Swamiji wanted me to address this topic long time back. She wrote that I should talk about this in detail. The topic is India, a cultural decline or revival, ? So let us say last 100 years or last 70 years, is India culturally going towards a decline or a revival? That is the subject of investigation. I have written out of my personal experience of what I have seen. So I recall when I wrote this book, then I took up India as I saw it. I remembered it, let's say from 1957 when I was 10. I was born in 46, so 10, 11. And I have a very clear memory, decade-wise, of what has happened in half of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, and now, almost coming to the end of the second decade in the 21st century. So I have taken what I have seen, जो मैंने देखा है, मैं उसका analysis कर रहा हूँ. And that is why I have not gone to documentation by others. I am analyzing things which I know, which were there, I mentioned them. So when I took an overview, the first thing that I saw was that there has been a very steady change in the temperament of the Indian nation from 50s onwards. And that very often we Indians fall into some sort of an overconfidence, which is symbolized by the song Sare Jahan Se Acha. And then we go on to claim that Rome and Greece, they disappeared, and ours is the only civilization. And there is something in India, kuch baat hai ki hasti mitti nahi hamari, and you find this kind of line being churned out by all kinds of people all the time. And my book started, or my thinking started, with a suspicion of this line. Kuch baat hai ki hasti mitti nahi hamari. Because it is not good to be so sure of yourself. Now this line, as you know, was written by Iqbal, who later on generated the idea of Pakistan, 1935, and then the whole idea of Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan was translated into Sare Jahan Se Acha Pakistan. So this song really does not typify anything very deep. It was a nationalistic song at a period, it had a value. But somehow the sentiment has carried over all the time. And I think it's a very deceptive sentiment. Because not that nothing is permanent in this world. I mean, we have all read Sarvavyasya Vashadagat Smriti Patham Kalaya Tasmai Namah. Bhartihari said that everything goes into the mouth or the gullet of Kala or time. Nothing remains, everything disappears. It's not that I'm taking my logic from there, but that I am seeing that some of the most valuable things of Indian civilization have not only disappeared in the last 2000 years, but are disappearing now within my memory from 1955. See. So that makes me question and raise the question, is India in a cultural decline or is it in a revival? Now when I published this book in 2008, then quite a number of my friends were very disappointed. They said, this is not a good title. India cultural decline or revival. Everybody will just remember the first part, the decline, and they say, he is talking about decline. I said, look, somebody who is dispassionate, particularly with oneself, has to mention what one sees. Not what is palatable, enjoyable, or which makes a very good political speech. If Vyasa was not disappointed with what he saw, Dvaipayana Vyasa, he would not have written Mahabharata. So we would have had only Ramayana by Valmiki and no Mahabharata. And in that case, nobody would have valued Ramayana either. Because Ramayana is valuable because of Mahabharata. Because somebody talked about the reality of Mahabharata as well. So one has to see the cultural decline as well as the cultural revival. The other thing that I have mentioned in this book very clearly is the framework of this book. I have not written this book according to the principles of contemporary Western sociology. That is, looking at the GDP, looking how prosperous people are, what is the poverty level, and how many conflicts are there conflict resolutions and things like that. No. I have taken an entirely different paradigm, because I think India is not described at all by any of these sociological or anthropological systems as they prevail in modern Western universities, and therefore in Indian universities pretty much the same. But they are better described, India is better described by a shloka which occurs in Panchatantra, but which perhaps comes from Mahabharata. It is found in some editions of Mahabharata. What is this shloka? And this is one of those anonymous or sukti which nobody knows who is the author. So the verse goes like this: Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe. Ekam, that is the individual. Tyajet kulasyarthe, for the sake of the interest of the family, do not look at the interest of the individual. The individual interest is not greater than family interest. Now, ekam tyajet kulasyarthe, gramarthe kulam tyajet. For the interest of grama, or the habitat or the city that you belong to, give up the interest of the family. It is the larger habitation which is more important than the family. Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe, gramarthe kulam tyajet, gramam tyajet janapadasyarthe. Give up the gram or the village or the city for the sake of janapad, that is the bigger state or rashtra, etc. And atmarthe prithvim tyajet. And for the sake of atma, give up the whole earth. So there are 6 units in which life is defined. Not in terms of classes, the ruling class, the ruled class, the middle class, or those who are bourgeois, or those who will get freed by some kind of a political system, either by acquiring things under the capitalist system of acquiring wealth, or under the communist system of perfect ownership and things available to everybody as per needs, etc. This is not the paradigm. I have taken ek, kula, janapada, prithvi, and atma. So, no, yes, you are right. Thank you for reminding me. Gram. So the first 3 are very clear. Eka, gram, janapada. Ekam tyaje kula. Eka, kula, grama, janapada, prithvi, and atma. So, if you make these units, and then if your social ideal of whatever you do is according to that, then you will see a more harmonious society, and you will be able to create a harmonious society. So this book is divided into 6 parts, but it takes up very practical things. I think what I can do is to just give you some of the titles that are available, and that would give you an idea of what I consider to be most important. The first chapter is called The Ritual Universe. The Ritual Universe, or the universe of the ritual. And here I talk about the value of what is ritual and what is ritual actually. I'm sorry that this came out in 2008, but I have been so unlucky that none of the Supreme Court judges have read these chapters, and they have delivered a judgment on Sabarimala and other temples. Now, this defines the value of ritual. What is ritual? What is karma? It is not something which is permanent. It is not something that exists all the time, but that it is a choice. And you do certain things in order to make certain affirmations. You do this even now. For instance, we have the 26th January parade. What is it for? It is to affirm modern Indian nationalism. That here is a nation, this is the time when the Constitution 1950 made, and we are celebrating the Republic Day, and we are going to defend this Republic, so we have all our armored strength for it, and also our cultural identity, etc. And we do it every year. There are people who say, why spend so much money on it? A few say, but by and large, it's done every year, and it is the ritual of the secular state. Right? It's the ritual of the secular state, but it is sacred, it is admitted, and millions are spent on it. Whereas, people think that if you put half a kilo of milk on Shivalingam, then that is a waste. Why not give it to poor people? Why not give it to the hospital? I have an Arya Samaji friend who is never tired of saying, don't make a temple in Ayodhya, make a hospital. It will benefit everybody. An Arya Samaji called Ved Pratap Vaidik. Because Dayanand did not want the ritual of Murti worship But he never thought that the Vedic Yajna and his oversimplified Vedic Yajna, in which mantras were read, read out without any accent and without any proper method, and in which the Vedic Yajna was not performed by the four purohits, but was done by yourself, and whether you are rightly reading the mantras or not is not important. So this anti-ritualism is part of the secular state. And this anti-ritualism is really striking at the roots of Hindu culture. By Hindu I mean not just Shaivas or Vaishnavas, etc., but Hinduism as a whole, including what is the namaz of Eid. It's a ritual. You go to a place, you go to Eidgah. Why don't you go to another place? So it's a ritual. It's valuable. So the kind of secular rituals are being elevated, and the older rituals related to divinity, related to religion are being eliminated. That goes on to show that the secular state of India is an intolerant state. It is anti-spiritual and anti-culture. So this is the first thing to be noted. That's why this is the first chapter of this book. And when I talk about the ritual universe, then I explain the value of ritual. A ritual is done as a matter of choice, so that you can concentrate on an idea and bring that idea to your mind. All the actions are performed accordingly, and your inner transformation of your feelings is brought through that ritual. So when you do, let us say, the typical Hindu ritual of washing the statue, the vigraha, then dressing, then giving it food, then doing all kinds of oblations, singing praise, giving gandha or sugandha, then you are creating a mental state within yourself in order to concentrate on that idea of divinity which comes close to you. This is the meaning of ritual. You do similar thing even in a secular ritual. But the hypocrisy of the secular state is, the intolerance of the Marxist secular state is that it says, my ritual is the right ritual. Legitimate ritual. So 26th January parade is legitimate, but Sabarimala is not legitimate. Or worship in a temple is not legitimate. You see the kind of bias which has come in the modern secular state. I'll give you another very humorous example. Jawaharlal Nehru, before his death, made a testament. About 2 pages, something like that. And the Nehruvians were so happy about it, that here is what the modern great leader has said, breaking all the bonds of tradition, breaking the bonds of ancient rituals, etc. What does he write? I used to teach that because it was part of a text. And what he says is that when I die, I don't want this mumbo jumbo of mantras around me. Of course, you may burn me, not bury me. And we'll discover in a moment why he didn't want to be buried, but he wanted to be burned. He said that after I have been burned, you take my ashes high into the sky and then you throw them into the air so that my ashes and me, that is me, gets united with this great soil of India. Now, every year that I taught this, Somebody in my class, somebody 18-year-old or 19-year-old will say, but sir, what is the difference? When in the traditional ritual, when your ashes are taken and put into the river, Ganges or not, that ash goes into the soil of the country. So what's the big thing? Now this pompousness, which you find in Jawaharlal Nehru, is the crux of the secular state. And there is this great intolerance that I am modernizing. And this is the pseudo-modernizer. He just doesn't see that there is no difference. The Hindus, the ancient ones, the so-called evil Brahmins, they were doing this all the time. And without a helicopter or without an airplane. The poorest of the poor can do it. So, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, how have you added to modernity? How have you become more close to the great earth of this land than, let us say, a woodcutter? And of course, he didn't say that, let me be buried, because then you would be close only to 6 by 2 feet of soil. But you have to be burned so that the ashes can be thrown into the sky. And I could see that so many of my colleagues, particularly in the English department, would say, this is so modern. And my student, 1 or 2, would every year ask, but sir, kindly explain. I have no explanation, please. Now this is the crux of most claims of modernity of the Indian secular state. That it has disregarded, that it has abused, that it has belittled in a highly derogatory way the whole tradition of India in all its variety under the name of modernity, and replaced it with something absolutely mediocre, bureaucratic, repetitive, and actually reactionary. So the first chapter, Ritual Universe, points finger to the real problem. The second chapter is called Education Without Art. Now, when does this start? Education without art. You see, when the British started the education system in India, when Macaulay wrote 1832 his minutes, he saw to it that none of the arts of India, in Sanskrit or Arabic or Awadhi or Tamil or this or that, is ever taught in a university. You see, all Europeans were celebrating from the Renaissance, that is 14th century onwards, Greek art and Latin art and Roman art and the great works of classical world, which of course was not part of their culture, but Mediterranean culture, the Greeks and the Romans. Now that's another big fraud which has been perpetuated in the Western world. You see, they appropriated the Greeks and the Romans as their ancestors, whereas they had no connection with them. And they did more than anybody else in destroying, in 3rd century, the classical world. Very heavily they destroyed it. But when they come to India, then they see to it that no art becomes part of Indian education. So you would teach English language, you would teach some history, you would teach some mathematics, you would teach some later on physics and chemistry, but you would never teach music. There are not many music departments in Indian universities to this day. And even after 70 years of independence, the Anglophonic bureaucracy of this country has not allowed to remedy the banishment of music, dance, painting, literature, traditional arts like Ashtavadhan and yoga and other things. They don't allow it to this day. And the moment somebody says, "Wait, let's do some yogasanas," and say, this is non-secular, this is Hinduism. So, making a painting by imitating, let us say, the Venus of Milos, or, actually the Venus in the island of Milos in Greece, they discovered a statue of Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Venus was the name Romans gave, and went to some museum, I think it is in the British Museum. That was an ideal of art. And hundreds and thousands of painters over decades have been painting it and teaching it and talking about it. But painting was not taught in any Indian university. Some university departments have departments of painting, and then they call it School of Art and they keep it separate. But it's not part of the general education system. So when Swamiji read this long, extensive list of Indian texts today, and such an impressive list, any nation would be proud of it, any civilization would be proud of it. I was just thinking that our university graduates don't know a single name out of this long list. They have only heard of Kalidas, but they don't know what he wrote, because it is never taught, it is never. And the result of it is that this total ignorance of Indian texts has created a disconnect with our own past. We don't really know what people were thinking 1,000 years ago. And when somebody comes around and says, India or outside India, whether he knows that text or he doesn't know that text, whether he's Arya Samaji or Shaiv or this or that, he may have just heard it from his guru something. So he comes and claims that this is Indian civilization, this is Bharatiya Sanskriti. Like you see so many of the gurus, long beards, etc., sitting on television today and saying, this is Indian culture. And if you ask them, but where is it mentioned, sir? They'll say, I'll send you an SMS. Now this great disconnect has happened. Modernity has come to mean following second or third or fourth rate technology as used for commercial purposes in Europe or America, and defining your life according to that. So you get so disconnected that eventually all you want to do is to get a degree and settle somewhere in America or Australia. And the best minds have been doing it for the past 50 years. And therefore India is not really taking care of its own education, its own, primarily because the arts have been thrown out. Now, what is the great disadvantage when arts are thrown out? You see, Indian arts are very different. The theory of art in India has hardly any parallel. If there is some sort of a slight parallel, then that existed in ancient Greece. You see, for the Greeks, teaching of music even to the soldiers was necessary. Every person who would go into war, either in Sparta or in Athens or any other Greek state, would be taught music, because music was part of the attack. There was a whole system of arousing your emotion, and music was part of good living. Music was part of enjoying life. Now we can't do that because we do not have much understanding of our music. Whosoever controls that music or provides patronage to the musician is in Bombay or Madras, in the film world. It's not in the universities. So our performing arts repeatedly have become commercial, but that was not the vision of India. The vision of India was that art or drama, which includes all art, is the fifth Veda. Is there any country, is there any theory, anywhere, even in Greece, which has given the status of Veda, the most revered text, to art? No. We call Natya and art as Panchama Veda.
Gandharva Veda.
Gandharva Veda is one of the Vedas, of the Kalpas, but the whole of Natya Veda is called fifth Veda. It's the only Veda. Sometimes Mahabharata is also called Pancham Veda. But the theory of art is that performing arts were given to the people so that the essence of Veda, the message of Vedas could come to them. And it is not our acharyas who have preserved our darshanas. You see, it is not those who know Sanskrit or who have Bhagwa saffron clothes or who hold ashrams or who are the teachers of philosophy who have preserved Indian philosophy in the Indian people. No, sir. Sorry, madam. I hold you in the highest esteem, but I am going to say the fact. No, the sannyasis have not perpetuated the darshanas of India. It is the actors, the storytellers, those who have recited the Ramayana, those who have enacted the Ramayana and Mahabharata and the thousands other stories, those who belong to the world of Natya. Performing arts in India teach you what is a particular darshana. We saw it yesterday. Didn't we hear, those of you who had come? That Yashoda thinks that this is my child, and then all of a sudden the realization is given to her by Krishna himself that no, I am not just your child. And then immediately says, but yes, I understand, but I don't want to see you as Brahma. I don't want to see you as the Virata Swarup. I want to see you as my little baby so that I can have Vatsalya Bhakti. Right? Now, who has been telling us that? Not Shankaracharya. But all those who wrote the poetry and who enacted the poetry and who have continuously enacting, whether in Odisha or in Tamil Nadu or in Gujarat or anywhere, the whole. And this very idea that Nirguna Brahma, Virata Brahma is also Saguna Brahma and is accessible to us has been sung in hundreds of Indian languages. So we had this composition just newly composed by the lady yesterday, the dancer. Then you have this very famous song Adi Sitala Yasoda Jagatodhar. This is Purandar Das, 300 years ago. Then the same by Jayadev and later on. So the intimacy of the philosophy to the people which exists in India today is because of the Pancham Ved. What is mentioned in Natya Shastra, that Natya is the fifth Veda. Indra had asked something for entertainment. Kridaniyakam ichhamo. Please give me a toy. Kridaniyakam ichhamo. Yat shravyam cha drishyam bhavet. Something which is seen and heard at the same time. Give me that art form. He said, all right, I am giving you. But he didn't give him Natya only. He gave him Natya Veda. So the fact that arts are Vedas. India, since 19th century, has not woken up to this idea that Kala is Veda. We have not, because waking up doesn't mean just reciting famous shlokas in praise of art, from Yakeval Smriti or this or that. It means practically doing it. So all arts are not part of Indian education, and that is why there is such lack of culture and such lack of unity. You see, we talk of national unity, absence of national unity. It is because what was uniting us was art. An idea which is born somewhere in Tamil Nadu, it starts traveling, comes to Gujarat and Rajasthan, and then the idea of Saguna Bhakti, and goes up to Assam, and the whole of the country is engulfed. And in all the languages of the country, the same idea is repeated again and again by performers, by poets, by writers. So this was the unity which they created through art. And when you take away the art, then all you will have is disunity. Now, the fourth chapter I go on is about conversion.
That's chapter 3 or chapter 4?
Yes, this is about Sanskrit, but I need not repeat it because I have more or less covered, Sanskrit is part of the arts, part of literary heritage. So, the fourth is the idea of conversion. That is conversions an issue of human rights, or is it a conversion of or an issue of survival? Now the fact is that our Article 25 of the Constitution, it says that anybody has a right to profess and propagate its religion. So Christians have the right to do it, Muslims have the right, Islamics have the right to do it, and Marxists have a right to do it. The Nastikas have a right to do it. Well, everybody has a right to propagate and practice. But what about the right of creating a situation in which there is no equality? Now, the very fundamental presumptions of Christianity and Islam is that all religions are not equally true. So, according to the Christian faith, only faith in Christ and salvation through Christ is true, and everybody else will burn in hell. Similarly, with the Islamic faith, that those who are not Muslims will not have salvation. They are the other. They are not equal. They are down. Now, if you have two big faiths of the world, two major faiths of the world propagating this, do you think this kind of propagation should be allowed? If I go to United States of America and tell all Christians that, look, you are all going to your hell because you are not Hindus, let me provide you with a Hindu heaven, I don't think I'll be able to survive there for 2 days. They'll immediately find a method, they will charge me with some kind of an anti-US activity and throw me out. But the Article 25th of the Constitution allows two major religions of the world, where the total population of these two religions, Christianity and Islam, is bigger than the population of whole of India. There are more Muslims in this world, more Christians in this world than Hindus. So, under the garb of parity, modern secular state again has become anti-Hindu. Because if you say, well, I have a right to propagate my religion, but I am not going to run down your religion, then it's fine. Yes, you can talk about the good virtues of your ideological faith, and if I like them, I'll accept, I'll convert. If I don't, then I will not. Secondly, if converting is part of your faith, then you are not on the same footing as I am. Because converting is not part of my faith. I don't go to heaven because I am able to convert a Christian. My mukti is not dependent or connected or related to that at all. But Christ said, go out into the world. It's very clearly mentioned, and all these Christian organizations with millions and trillions that they have, like the Unreached People and Joshua Project and Thessalonica Project, they all are practicing it. So, I think this is one of the problems that the modern secular state in India has to face. Now, this is about the first chapter, Eka, uprooted individual. I call this because the individual has been in India uprooted. It was rooted in ritual, it was rooted in religion, it was rooted in a vision, and it has been uprooted by modernity, by secularism, and by predatory religions. Then I go to the second part called Broken Homes. And the first chapter there is Yayati and Kamsas, unbridled indulgences of affluent Indians. You see, in my introduction to this book, I have said there are three big cultural dangers, operative dangers to India. Number one is proselytizing Christianity. Number two is proselytizing Islam. And the third is consumerism. Because the Indian population, the Indian middle class and the rich, they have fallen into the trap of unbridled consumerism. And it has made them insensitive, and it has separated them from all the ideals of dharma, artha, kam and moksha, which were the ideals of this civilization earlier. And therefore I call the modern consumerist Indians as Yayatis and Kamsas. See, there are two Vedic stories of the Lord. That of Yayati. Yayati is the king who took away the youth of his son in order to have a more extended life of sexual enjoyment. And Kansa is the one who would not allow a young ruler to exist. So he plans to kill Krishna. And later on in this book, I go on to show that how the establishment in India, within India, does not allow people to grow. That it snuffs them. Both ways. By having a control like Yayati and having a control, Kansas, and so there are chapters on this. And the fourth is, then the seventh chapter here is called Disappearance of the Fourth Ashram. Now this is a very tricky subject. You see, the fourth ashram, and I talk about the ashram vyavastha, the ashram of sannyas in India was primarily reserved for virakti and adhyatma. Although in apadharma, there have been situations when the sannyasis had to take to some kind of alms, like the akhadas in 7th, 8th centuries, etc. But those were apadharmas. But in the last 50 years in India, what has happened is that a large number of, or if not large, at least substantial number of swamis have entered into direct politics. So I question this and I say that, look, there was a Samartha Ramadas who was supporting a Shivaji. Right? There may have been somebody who provided a lot of knowledge to the king. There was a Vishwamitra for a Rama. Right? But it was only in Apadharma that a Parusharam became a killer himself. And then Parusharam did not become a ruler. He only destroyed the erring Kshatriyas. He did not acquire. He did not become a member of parliament, a minister. So in the last 50 years, we have this problem where the person who has the saffron robe, who is taking all the advantages of asceticism, becomes a political leader. Now, of course, you can do it without having the saffron robe, like Mahatma Gandhi. You see, he became Mahatma. He prescribed all kinds of austerities, and it was the power of austerity or some kind of a pseudo-sannyasta dharma which he followed, and he became a political leader. And this has been now taken by sannyasis who are in the ochre robe. And they say that this is apadharma, and therefore, for the sake of dharma, a sannyasi can become a pravritti margi. We can take to pravritti instead of sannyas. So this is one of the problems in modern India. I go to part 2, that is analyzing the gram. What is gram? In this, I take very specific issues of vote bank politics. I take the issue of creating new vote banks on the basis of ethnology and religion and caste and creed and commerce, and bringing people into a power struggle. Then about the politics of giving vote to young people, it was reduced from 21 to 18. Some people say it should be now reduced to 16 or 14. Why is a 14-year-old not capable of choosing a prime minister? So that kind of a thinking is something which is still going on and is quite dangerous. I take up the question of contradiction between modernity and the Varna system, and how so many problems do not get resolved because we still have a very mixed attitude towards caste. You see, either some people say wipe out caste, Whereas some others say that no, it is beneficial in certain ways. Whereas very few people say that the whole system is surviving in a new form. You see, we have dynastic politics, and we have people who have acquired new caste. Then we have new professions which are more or less caste professions, like doctors, like lawyers, like judiciary. You see, most of the judiciary is related father-son affair now in India. Whether you go to the district court or high court or supreme court, the whole judicial system is a caste. And we don't want to see that. We only say that, well, Manu was horrible, and so we are anti-Manu. But we are not anti-present entrenchment of modern professions and creating a caste-ridden society. I gave you examples. Then when I come to Janapad, I talk about linguistic issues. I talk about questions of nationalism. I talk about questions of plurality in education, as to why we don't want to have a more diverse education, not just having arts in it, but also diversity within languages, diversity within. Then when I go to from Janapad, I go to Prithvi, then I talk about the diminishing boundaries of the modern world, in which a huge number of Indians are now settling abroad. So we have one India or Bharat, and then we have also Brihad Bharat, that is the greater India, that is diaspora, Indians living in Australia, United States, Europe, etc. And they constitute a cultural unity of some sort, what would be their future, etc. So there is an essay on that. And finally, because this was about Prithvi, finally it is about Atma. You know, Atmarte Prithvim Tyajit. Then at this point, I go to certain very fundamental philosophic issues in modern times. And this part of the book is written in a fictional mode, making a parody of the dialogues of Plato. And I have taken two examples. You see, the modern world today is plagued with two very seriously dislocating ideas. One is relativism. One man's food is another man's poison. So you say, okay, you consider this as food, have it, even though it may be poison for me. So that means there are no universal standards, there are only standards of diverse behavior. So it's good for you, you continue. But it's not good for me, so I'll continue. But I'll not go into the question whether it is good for humanity or not. So parda is good for a Muslim, but bad for a modern Christian. It was very good for a Christian 1000 years ago.
So we are under the garb of relativism, we are running away from certain fundamental issues.
Fundamental issues that confront the whole of mankind. For instance, how much of our resources are we going to use and in what manner? How much of air, earth, water? Now these are fundamental issues, but we are all running away from them because we believe in relativism. Then there's another chapter, the final chapter of the book, the issue of happiness. What is happiness? And what is your approach to happiness? Is absence of suffering happiness? Or happiness is something pure and legitimate and accessible in itself? So, should I choose the Ananda Marga, in which happiness is positive? Or should I choose the Bauddha Marga, in which the sansara is dukkha, and absence of dukkha is happiness or nirvana. So which is real? Real or is nirvana real? So that's the final question about the nature of Atma or fulfillment of Atma, and that is the sixth part and the final essay of the book. And I have taken all these things. I have not made a judgment in the sense that India is in a decline or that India is in a revival, but I have examined various aspects under these 6 categories. So thank you very much. If you have questions, I'll take them up.